Sky howdy, and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio.
Okay, and we're on to our next guest, and this is another person who is a regular viewer, watcher of my show, and contacted me, wanted to come on over and be over here for the meet and greet weekend. And as it turned out, he ended up being the photographer for it, so only fitting that we have him on to talk about it and explain a little bit of the stuff that he saw, heard, experienced, and photographed during the course of the couple days that we were running around.
Duke, it's good to have a new Squatch friend, and you just happen to have an awesome show.
That doesn't hurt, I suppose. I've just been having a lot of fun this summer because finally people have been, traveling, vacationing through the area, or actually making the effort to come way over here to the Forbidden Valley of Shangri-La, hidden in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, apparently where I'm at. In the middle of nowhere, multiple mountain ranges on each side, not exactly conveniently close by. So when people do come by, I really appreciate it, and it's been really fun having folks from, as far away as like California just randomly stop by, or Iowa. Hey Duke, I'm in the area, what you up to? Hey, let's go squatching. And take them out, and we always seem to find stuff, and they always have a great time with it. And now most of those folks are out regularly doing squatching in the areas that they're living in, and they're sending me pictures and calling me up and letting me know what the latest thing is that happened and stuff like that. So it's really fun for me because they were already interested in it, and then once they showed up and went out and did some more, some actual in the field stuff and learned a little bit more of what to look for, it's like they don't need no more help. They're out there by themselves doing just great right now. So I really have fun with that, and I also really appreciate the fact that you made it over for the meet and greet. You drove from a couple states away, so not exactly just right next door. And
yeah,
I think you had a good time that weekend. But go ahead, let us all know what your thoughts are.
Well, I did. I had a great time. Just got hit a little bit in the pocketbook, but it's still worth it. Yeah, I haven't had anybody to go squatching with me for 2 years, and I listened to all your shows, and I was like, man, I can't handle it. I got to go meet this guy. So I just went over there on a whim, and I heard about all your awesome areas in Montana. And then we get there, and you're like, hey, I'll show you the top 3. So off we went.
And we actually had some fairly good success. The first day we went over to the Blackfoot, and all you guys that have watched the Montana Bigfoot Project videos will remember the Bigfoot on the Blackfoot video series that I did. And I showed them where all those shots were from, where the cave was, where the track line going down the side of the hill was, where the one that was in the river that Jack saw was, and where I found the 19-inch track. And while we were over there looking around that same sandbar, lo and behold, we find a handprint in the sand. And, it's like, it could be a human, but man, that would have had to have been a really big human to leave a handprint that big. So I just said, well, this seems to be likely maybe not a human. So we should probably take a picture of it. So we got
the mistake and left his handprint there because they don't normally leave too many handprints.
No, I've never seen one before. I just found knuckle prints in Montana for the first time earlier this year, and I wasn't the one that found them. Michael found them, and a couple nice ones actually.
Yeah, I had seen fingerprints in the sand before, but they were like so big it didn't really occur to me that they were Sasquatch. And then you show me that, I was like, I've seen this before, but I just never seen the palm of the hand with it.
Yeah, this was not a gigantic one. I mean, I was at the International Bigfoot Conference there last weekend, and one of the guys there had a bunch of casts of handprints, really big. Fingers like the size of Twinkies, and like a catcher's mitt for the rest of the hand. So this wasn't that size. So, you're looking at, if it was a Sasquatch, it was a smaller one. It was a juvenile, maybe 7 feet tall or something like that. It wasn't one of the humongous ones. But the handprint just seemed to be far enough outside the normal human range that it looked to me.
Yeah, and people will be able to see it when you show the picture on today's show. They'll come to the conclusion that's probably not a human.
If it is, it was a really big human. I don't know where he lives around here. I haven't seen him.
Well, yeah, I guess Andre the Giant had a son, and he just happened to be walking down.
Yeah, exactly. I just wish it hadn't been in that really loose, dry sand, so he could have gotten a little bit better impression, because this is, something, put its hand down, pulled its hand up, and then the sand sort of filled in all the detail right away, so you can see sort of the basic outline of it.
Yeah, but good thing about sand is you can find some prints in it.
that's for sure.
So it was kind of exciting because you were telling me there's that big old grumpy one that lives across the river. And I was thinking, man, the likelihood of us finding here is pretty good. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and there's that big handprint, like I said. For what he's referencing, I'll be right now showing you guys the 19-inch track that I found over there. I found two of them, actually. One I stepped across and kind of ruined, but documented the other one. Got a couple pictures, so I'll show you guys those. But, we didn't stay down there too long. We decided to go up to Deep Creek and Blue Mountain.
Well, we were wanting to cross the river and wake up that big boy, but I was thinking, our phones are likely to get wet, and if we wake up the grumpy Squatch, we at least need to have it recorded when he rips our arms off.
Yeah, because one of us can get out a live stream while the other one's getting killed, so we can get some document.
Stay still. He's moving too fast.
Yeah. Hey, can you scream louder? The mic isn't picking you up very well.
Just think of the street cred you'll get if that Squatch rips your arm off and uses it for a toothpick.
It starts beating you over the head with it afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll work out.
That would up the street. Hey, mister, Bob Gimlin only filmed one. You got your arm ripped off by a Squatch. Can I have your autograph?
Oh, sure, but I have to do it with my left arm because the right one got ripped off. Here you go, kid.
Yeah, my right fingers are kind of messed up from that Janoska stepping on when I was camping in that thicket, so I have to sign with my foot right now. Yeah. No thanks, no thank you, no thank you. I'll stay unmaimed and less known if that's what it takes. That'll work for me. So yeah, like I said, we spent part of the day over there, and we were debating actually staying there for the night, and then we decided to go up and hit Deep Creek, where me and Michael had been about 6 weeks before, and found all the water running in anymore. It was all dry. We weren't seeing much signs of anything being around there, and we kind of spent basically a quiet night.
I did.
What did you hear?
Well, I heard rock clacking time to time.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that in the next morning. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yep. Well, then the Rangers came by and kind of distracted me, so I had forgot about it for a while, but then remembered it. But then we were about an hour and a half into just talking in the dark and having a great old time, and I hear just a little boop pretty close by, and I was like, oh, I guess somebody's watching us here. And I had heard quite a bit of movement up on the hill. Seems like when Sasquatch is around, at least with me, I'll hear like a pretty loud noise and then just total silence. Then it'll move off to the side and get a little bit closer. And I'll hear a big noise, like something snapping or something come down a hill and you got rocks sliding down under the weight of its feet. So I knew something was pretty big was over there. Yeah, there was no menacing feeling there, just kind of a quiet night. We were camped out near the that gun range that had guns going off like crazy, so Squatches probably weren't feeling too aggressive with all that going on.
Well, but then again, that's going on all the time. Even in the winter, they're up there using that gun range. There's one of the two there's one on the east side of Missoula and there's one on the west side of Missoula. And this is the one that's over on the west side of Missoula. It's on the Bitterroot Mountain
But,
side.
I was dead tired. So who knows what happened in the night. I was just too tired to care.
Yeah, well, I was right there with you. I was pretty beat, too.
But we did have a little bit of food left out in the cooler, and I checked it in the morning, and it wasn't messed with, so I don't think they came up. It's a pretty docile Sasquatch. Because usually when they got ill intent, I can kind of feel it. And this just felt like a really nice.
Yeah, I didn't feel any sense of menace or anything like we had in Coloma, or even up in the Schuylkill. It was a little scarier than that. And speaking of which, so the next morning we got up, came into town, got more supplies, and went out and drove for an hour and a half. And got to the Schuylkill and set up a little camp, and we barely got there before dark. And as we were setting up camp, there's this deer wandering around by the camp, and this doe is like clinging to the. I don't think she got more than 100 feet from us all night long, and most of the night she was way closer than that. And Bear here had this great FLIR with him, so every time he'd hear a noise, he'd pull up the FLIR and look to see what it was, and invariably it was this deer.
Right. Yep. Yeah, we drove past there the first time I seen it, then we drove back and realized that was the campsite. That heaping deer was still there, and so we set up camp, and a bit of an ear filling up there, because I kind of have a Squatch radar. Right, and deer's acting peculiar, and it's staying pretty close. I was like, I've never really seen this before. And then as the night went on, I started feeling like that strong vibe where it's just like the life kind of gets sucked out of the air and you feel like there's a lot of pressure around you. And I'm like, man, yep. And I was like, man, I've felt this so many times before. And so we get out to FLIR, and I hear something just coming right up on your right side. And I'm like, oh my God, he's got to hear that. So I keep asking you if you hear it. And you're like, no, I don't hear that. And I was thinking, man, you'd probably be really good at being married, because if you don't hear this, you probably won't hear your wife nagging. Oh,
no, I could just like tune out almost anything.
I was literally thinking that right there. Yeah, so then I hear that proverbial branch snap, but it was up off the ground, like something that did it with his hand, and this the crispest one you could ever hear. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking, oh my God, don't draw your gun, we got one coming up on us, and it was getting real intense. And then I whip around, and I see that deer has come right up to us, and the sound. Then I whip around to where the sound came from with my FLIR, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to see one. But it had moved out of there. And then I would say about a half hour after that, it started getting really, really intense. I could feel movement, and I was just thinking, okay, I don't want to let out any fearful pheromones, because, Squatches like that. And so I'm just trying to tune in best I can on our conversation and laugh and put out like a really good positive vibe so they don't want to mess with us. And then, of course, you don't have any problem with that because your hearing isn't so good, and the Squatch was coming up and making noise right up by you, and you weren't hearing it. He's like, man, we can't phase this guy. We better get out of here.
Little do they know I can't hear him, and even if I could, I'd be indifferent to the whole thing. And guy, that's just a Bigfoot, don't worry about it. Until the mountain giant comes up, then get worried. Bigfoot, don't worry about that.
Yeah, they're like, oh, well, maybe we better sway back and forth before we leave, because normally that's what we Squatches do when we're nervous.
He's totally not paying any attention to us. How indifferent can this guy be? Well, he's just that deaf, guys. That's what it is.
Oh, I actually think that helped out a lot, because I could feel them. They were right up on us, and it was getting freaky. I did my absolute best to not pay attention to it and just focus on what you were saying and laugh and have a good time, because I didn't want any fear to start oozing off me, because that's when they start really doing something.
The other thing is they want to hear the stories. They haven't got the internet access to listen to the show regularly, so this is all new material to them.
Yep, Young Dukes.
World of Bigfoot Radio.
Even the Bigfoot want to hear it. Hey, Louie over in Washington State got on. Check it out, guys.
Yeah, maybe they.
Gleg's super famous. He's like the superhero of Bigfoot now. They all know. He's got his own Facebook page. No other Bigfoot has that.
Yep. So they're probably thinking about ripping one of your limbs off and getting on your show. Oh yeah. So.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So we finally went to bed, and then I'm just like, I'm out for like 2 hours. And then I wake up, and there's something up against my tent, and I was like...
And that freaks you out a little bit when you wake up and there's something leaning against your tent.
Well, it was just, like, vaguely, like, it wasn't all the way leaning up, but just there, and I was like, oh, that's that deer, and he's just kind of eating away, and then I wake up, 20 minutes later, still there, and I was like, oh... He must be trying to stay as close to us as he can because all the Sasquatch that are around there.
Yeah. Another excuse there could be for a doe coming up and like laying down next to your tent for like 3 hours. And this isn't.
And it may have been out for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it was during the night. It was circling us, so I think it was trying to keep us between it and the big predator.
Whatever that may have been, and we can guess what it is.
We don't. No, but
clear, yeah, and we didn't get like any for sure signs. One thing that I noticed is I looked up the river to where we had gotten the accidental capture of the possible tree peaker 2 years previous when we'd been in the exact same spot. And whatever the heck that object was, it was not there. So I can't say.
And just going by my vibe, being around them so many times, like last Monday, we went out squatching, seen a big one. We go down there. Oh, actually, right before I pulled in, I'm getting that huge vibe that one's down there, and I did not want to pull into the campground. It was just so thick. Sure enough, we pull in, and my nephew, Big Nate, sees one for like 3 seconds. It's just huge muscular back, and he's almost kind of going into shock, like, this isn't real. I did not just see that. He's having a hard time talking. And then when we're
and you're trying to throw it into park and run out with a camera and get a picture.
I know. It was like, oh, why wasn't my camera on? Why? But yeah, so we go down there and just chill out, and his girlfriend's there, and we're like, hey, make some female noises. And she's like, help, I'm alone, and I have a huge steak in my purse, and I'm all vulnerable. And we were laughing away. But yeah, I mean, and that exact spot, when I go down there, I have so much activity. The Sasquatch feel really froggy down there, and they'll come right up on you. But anyways, the reason I'm saying this is because that energy they put out when they're really concentrating on you and they're coming right up on you, it's so thick, you can feel it with every part of your being. And then we had just seen one there, so I mean that goes to show you, like, you kind of can have Sasquatch radar. Actually, I felt it there. We seen it. We go down there, and then we start hearing them make noise down in the creek, and then they're working their way up to us, and they're getting really, really close. And that Squatch radar is just going off like nuts. And that was the same thing when me and you were camped out there talking away, and that deer comes up on us. It was getting really, really, really thick. Same exact feeling. Yeah. I've been around Dogman before, and it's a completely different feeling. And when I'm around Sasquatch, I mean, you might be out there and say, oh, I felt some weird vibes, but that don't mean anything. I mean, you got to get proof. So if you're out there and trees getting pushed over on you, you're hearing whoops, then you go back there the next day, and where you heard the whoops, you see footprints. Yeah, I know. It's pretty much a Squatch, right?
Yeah, good guess at that point.
Right, and then in the morning up on Skulkahole, I hear...
Oh, yeah, this is right before dawn. This is like just a few minutes before the sun's coming up. I'm still totally out of it. I missed this.
Well, the night before, you snored pretty good, and I was like, he's not snoring tonight. And I was hoping, well, I hope he sleeps in. I don't really want to get up at the crack of dawn, so I'm just sitting there enjoying the stars and enjoying my new tent, and then I hear this loud whoop, and I was like, oh my god, wait, that's a Sasquatch. And the split second it was done, this like high-pitched, almost sounded like part bird, part demon, a little bit of the Sasquatch tone to it. Like probably 3 to 6 of them start up and do up and down moaning for like 1.5 to 2 minutes. And my reaction was to cover my head and then cover my ears. And I'm thinking, oh, this little voice that says, hey, you're out Bigfooting, you wuss. Sit up and listen to it.
This is what you're here for.
I was like, oh yeah, sorry about that.
And wake Duke up so he can go, oh yeah, they don't usually do that so early.
Yeah, I know, and I was like, ultra wishing you could hear it, because it was eerie. And it was coming up by kind of where the road was, not too far away from us, up on the hill. And I was just thinking, man, that sounds like something evil calling up something more evil from the abyss. It just had an eerie feeling to it. I could totally be wrong, but that was the feeling I had.
Well, I missed
So
it,
then,
and unfortunately he didn't record the sound because he was busy hiding under the covers. But fortunately for all of us, he went back and did some snooping and pooping on the internet, and he found a recording of it. It doesn't last as long as the one he heard, but it's pretty much the same call. So I'm going to play that for you guys right now. Wow, how about that, huh?
you know, oh God, what was
I can see why you hit under the covers. I would have too. That is just one of the weirdest, creepiest things.
Right.
And then right after it, you had like a samurai chatter thing for a few seconds, and then everything went like dead still.
Yeah. And what I heard there live in person was a little bit more higher pitch and just very, very eerie. And the fact that it went on for such a long time, you're just like, what the heck? What the heck? So then we get up a little late, but we head up there because we were going to go up there anyways. I think there was some tree bends that pointed that way. I'm not sure. Anyways, we were going to go up there anyways. So we head up to the exact spot where I heard it from. We come up on this hill, and once we get on top of it, all of a sudden we realize we're in this almost like Stonehenge-like area. So the top of the hill is just flat, and then it has, like they say, these rectangle-ish shaped rocks stood up on their side around the edge, and then has trees kind of wrapped around it. And then Duke makes a really interesting comment. What is that guy? Oh, Utah Sasquatch. He has a show, and he's always talking about Sasquatch having structures, and you can't see them until you're right up on them because they do like layered camouflaging. And I was like, oh, you're right, Duke. We could not see that until we're right.
Yeah, and it was like, what, about I think it was 5 big boulders there, and in between each boulder, they had this big pile of, like, timber, 3 or 4 stacked on top of each other, and it looked enough like it was just random, that you wouldn't really notice it until you went up on it and went, well, there's no stump here, where the hell did these trees fall over from? And then every avenue in between these big boulders was closed off like that, so nothing could easily get up on top of that hill without them knowing about it way in advance. And then the other thing that you found, I think you were the one that discovered it, was the one rock that was right in the middle and looked like it had carvings in it. There was a slot carved into the top of it that looked like you could take a standard mailbox and slide it into this slot, and it would fit into the top of this boulder. And then there was a round hole, 2 round holes next to it. One was about the size of like a little bit bigger than a coffee cup holder, and the other one was like the size of a coffee can. And they were obviously not natural. And that was really weird.
Yeah, I had heard on another show a rock that was flat on top with similar stuff in it. I couldn't remember it. But yeah, that was just extremely weird. And I almost thought it looked like it had on the very far edge like a crude footprint in it that sunk down about 2 inches. I mean, there wasn't toe prints or anything, but it was the shape of a foot, and then it looked like, yeah, there's 2 cup holders perfectly carved like a laser had done it. And then we commented to each.
Yeah, the same thing with that slot. That was nice and straight, perfect right angles. There wasn't anything natural about it. It was definitely carved.
So, I would say if there's a ceremonial area, that sure looked like one. And when I heard those sounds, I actually thought a weird ceremony was going on, and the sounds came from that exact spot. So think what you will, but that was just weird.
Man, I know how to pick the really bad camping spots, don't I? And this is like, if you're standing at our camp facing the direction where the sound came from and where we found this, and you go up just at like a 45-degree angle up to your left, you run into the boulder stack and the other stuff that I'd found up there previously, and half the distance away. So yeah, we need to go back up there again this fall and look around that area a little bit more. And
it's loaded, bro. We both know it.
Yeah. Another thing that we found that we hadn't found on previous expeditions up there, we went and checked the we went right up to where the Williams X was, and now another tree has fallen down and taken out one side. It actually crawled up on the talus slope behind it, and when I got up to the top of the slope, I could see there's a big vein of quartz in there, about a foot thick and about 5-6 feet long.
Right.
And then I started looking at some of the boulders below it, and it was like, yeah, they had pieces of quartz in it too. So there's the quartz thing again. And then we found an entirely new structure that we didn't find the last 2 times we were up there. And you got video and a bunch of pictures of it, which we're obviously showing everybody. But this was like one of the, what you call an asterisk structure. And it was huge. And there was 3 of them. And they were all just connected. As soon as you started walking out of one, you were literally walking into the next one. And trying to get around this area was like really difficult because it was so tangled. And it was so obviously constructed. There's just, everything about the same size crammed in from every different direction. A lot of it didn't have stumps anywhere near it. It had been moved into position. And, if a human's going to make a brush pile, they're not going to make this artistic, Jenga-looking sculpture type thing in the middle of nowhere where nobody's going to ever see it. So, again, that was really weird looking. That was some strange stuff there.
Yeah, Bigfoot's real, and he's a carpenter, as evidenced by all of his artistic structures he built up there.
Yeah, another thing, we managed on the way out to stop by something we had videotaped before, and that was the big fence, which was on the opposite side of a human fence. So random people couldn't just go wandering in there and take it down, which interestingly seems to have happened with a lot of the stuff that we could previously see from the road when we were up there is now mysteriously missing. But the one thing you could see from the road up there before that's still there is the thing that's on the opposite side of the fence, which is the Bigfoot fence. And you got a couple more good pictures and some video of that again to add to the older video we got. And again, you can clearly see there's no damn stump there. This tree doesn't even look like the trees that are around it. And it's crammed through about a dozen of them and actually bends twice in order to do it. So, not natural, folks.
Yeah, and I just found a bunch of those down at the river the other day where they're just intertwined, and the amount of strength it would take to shove them in between trees and then bend the log, it's just no human could have.
What it takes to do some of this stuff is it's frightful, actually. You see it in person and you're just like, my God, I don't want to see what did this.
Yeah, all you got to do is use your brain. Is there a stump there? Is there a huge tree with a broken limb that's the size of the end of the log that's intertwined through the other trees? No? Then something put it there.
Yep.
And like all those awesome structures we found, I was taking pictures, but my camera didn't, I don't know, they weren't on the phone when I got home, but yeah, there wasn't stumps where those asterisks were. Those were brought in there.
Yeah, and that was a lot. I mean, we had some of the bigger structures that we found in the Skalko. It's like, okay, this is tremendously heavy, and whatever moved it had to be huge, but it still only moved like 2 or 3 logs, right? And this thing was like dozens of these little trees had been ripped out and shoved through at all different angles to make 3 asterisks all connected to each other. Yeah, that was impressive. I want to get back there and document some more this fall, and I guess we're planning another follow-up trip up there sometime this month still. Ooh. So.
If somebody had 5 days and tons of energy and just tromp around up there and follow the tree breaks, as that'll point you to where more structures are, you're going to find a mass amount of stuff. And you might whiz off a Bigfoot or two like,
why is he messing with my structures? Time for a midnight tent visit.
Yeah, no kidding. Definitely they're paying attention. When you start noticing their structures and going from one to the other and documenting them, they are paying attention to that. Like,
no,
humans know that we're making this stuff and they're watching us now.
I have not done this, but somebody said, you don't really want to camp right next to their structures because you're going to get a lot of activity. Imagine waking up in the night and got to go to the bathroom and you pee on their most sacred structure and they're sitting there watching it.
Yeah, I don't think that would go over very well. I definitely don't think they would be very much in favor of that.
Yep.
And I mean, it's the same thing as if, like the neighbor dog came in and, bent a loaf on the carpet in your living room or something, you wouldn't be too happy about it. So it'd be much the same thing if you came in and were like decided to take a whiz on a big X structure or something. They probably wouldn't be too happy about that.
People, I think, are aware that they have all these structures. So if you had somebody up there checking out their structures, I mean, they're gonna be like, oh, this guy's aware of us, and they're gonna be following you around. And then the unfortunate thing is, you gotta camp in the darkness by yourself, and you know that giants are coming.
I'm just curious because they know that you're onto them and you're looking at their structures.
There's really nothing like camping out in the dark.
Yeah.
And having your senses just on full throttle, and you're having a great time out there, but you know huge, potentially dangerous things is going to come up on you at night, and it's just exhilarating. But if you survive it, you're always like, glad it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed the reaction from Jeff and Travis wasn't too positive the following. Yeah. Yeah, I noticed the reaction from Jeff and Travis wasn't too positive the following morning after the night in Oklahoma. But about a week later, they started thinking maybe they might want to do something like that again. At the time, they were just like, oh, the hell with this. Why did I even come along? There was things wandering around by my tent all night long.
By what you told me, it sounded a lot braver than me, walking around in the dark. I kind of stopped all that last few years.
Yeah, well, they haven't actually seen one yet, see. Once you've seen one and you know what's actually out there in the dark, you're not so much wanting to walk around in the dark anymore and like walk right into one, which you potentially could do. Once each of them sees one, it'll be a little bit different story. They won't be wandering around in the dark quite so happily, but you know they did have a dog with them, so they were counting on the dog to actually use its senses and notice things were sneaking up on them. When they were on the trail walking up and down the hill to where the standing stones were up at the top of it, at least at that point they were using a flashlight, but when they got up there they turned everything off. And they were up there a good 40 minutes to the point where we got worried about them because we didn't see the flashlight like a searchlight beam in World War II looking for Allied bombers or whatever coming up from the top of the mountain there. So we're like, that flashlight hasn't been on for quite a while. We better go check on those guys. And, yeah, they just had it off because they were filming the EMF meter, and occasionally when they would flick it on, they would be looking right at the woods where we were hearing sounds from too. They were on the other side of the woods from us, so they were hearing the same things we were. And every so often, it'd be Travis would get really worried, go, "Hold on, I need to check that out." And he'd turn the flashlight on and like play it around the woods a little bit. I'm sure I heard something over there. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you heard something over there too, and I know what it is. But the only part that was really scary there on the video that you guys will see here is where they decide to walk back down to the camp and they take the wrong turn and almost walk into the woods where these things are. And then at the last minute realize they're going the wrong way, thank God. And turn around and go down the hill instead of...
Had some more interesting stories if they would have took that turn, because they would have had something on their tail, guaranteed.
If we ever saw them again, they would have had more interesting stories. That would have been...
This makes it back. Can't talk for the first year, and you're like, "Oh, this is gonna be good when we get him to finally talk."
Yeah. Please tell me you got some video. Sasquatch. Well, that's not much of an interview. Okay, we'll wait another year. But yeah, they had a fun time up there, so you know I can totally relate. Glad you showed up for it. I mean, the only hitch that we had on the whole weekend was kind of when we were on our way back out again. We had mechanical problems, and the vehicle broke down sort of in the middle of friggin' nowhere where you always expect it to, and we're out in fields, not even any trees around, just the Great Plains, and you can't get a cell phone signal, and it's like a million degrees, and we're just going like, oh great, now we're gonna just die. What the hell? It took us like 4 hours to get the car to like civilization, get a tire on it, and finally get back on the road again.
Yeah, and we would have found a lot more stuff if we could have got out there earlier that one day, but we had a little hitch in our giddy up, and then that last day we had, well, I guess we wasted most half the day because of that flat tire.
I actually wish that we had gone out there the night before instead of going up to Deep Creek, because although Deep Creek had a little bit of activity, Skulko was a lot hotter up there. If we were there the second night, for sure we would have had him right by camp then, making noise, chucking at us.
seems like once they get a little more comfortable with you, then they can kind of ramp up.
For sure. And as they lose patience. Like if you're in an area where they don't want you to be for very long, by about the second or third night, they're going to start showing up and making their presence known. And then they'll make it more and more apparent up to about the fourth night, at which point you better get the hint.
Yeah, probably if we were there on the fourth night, we'd have our sleeping bags right next to the car door, so we can just roll into the car and get out of there.
We were joking with Travis about him waking up in the morning with his tent hanging about 40 feet up in a tree and unzipping his tent and falling out into the ground. It's like, that's practically where those guys were at. They're both camped over by this collapsed log cabin, you know, like within 10 feet of each other, and they've got like 10 audio captures between 2 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning of these things walking around by their tents. And it's like really, really obvious because there wasn't hardly any wind. And you can, a couple of these captures, you can hear the big giant footsteps crunch.
Had them 2 feet away from my head at night and my hand a couple inches from the gun, my gun. And I was like, it got up on me so quick, I can't even get my hand on my gun. What do I do? You want to experience reality. I mean, you never feel so alive as some huge giant walking up on you.
You're laying on the ground, and you've got your gigantically protective nylon fabric between you and the giant. It's, you know, will definitely save you from a nuclear blast, a giant.
Make us feel better when we're it.
Yeah, I can't see what's standing right next to me, so I'm safe. Wait, let me double protect myself. I'll pull the covers over my head. Now I'm nuclear blast proof too.
Yep, same train of thought as the old ostrich with his head in the sand. But in a way, it does work. I mean, if you're not scared and you're not emitting those fearful pheromones, a predator isn't as likely to do something. You just gotta stay calm.
Is that Bigfoot isn't in a predatory mode when they're sneaking up on humans. They're either curious or they just don't want you in their area and they're trying to give you a gentle.
And so many of the times, if it is something messing, it could be something. I mean, it could be something completely different, and in our head, we're like, "Oh, well, I'm into Bigfoot, so that sound has."
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, anything they do can be perceived as scary because they are quite big. But if people that know them are just like, "Oh, he's just telling you might want to move along."
Yeah. Well, you know, the first encounter I had wasn't with a regular Type 1 Bigfoot or anything anyway, so this is a little bit different story. But once I got to be more knowledgeable about the Type 1s and the Type 2s, I became really a lot less paranoid of them. Because it's so rare that you really hear about them being overly aggressive. Usually when it happens, there's like reasons for it. It's really rare that one will just, you know, come up and slap somebody on the back of the head and face plant them into a trail with no provocation or something like that. Generally, if they're going to do anything aggressive to it, you provoke them for some reason. So that being the case, it makes you a lot less paranoid. Yeah, they're huge, they're potentially dangerous, but for the most part, they don't usually mess with humans. You know, you can find a rare one that's going to be a big problem. Potentially could be, you know, like, be the end. But for the most part, it's just like black bears or something. The majority of them are going to stay away from you. The only thing they're really interested in is your food. You know, Bigfoot's smarter than that. They're just curious. So, in all food thing aside, you know, they could still show up and be looking at your camp and being interested in what you're doing, not just attracted to food. But in general, they're no more dangerous than a black bear or something like that. I mean, yeah, they're powerful, potentially dangerous. They're omnivores. They take advantage of their environment, you know, just along the same lines as what Bigfoot does. But how often does one actually attack a human? Usually it's an accident where somebody's like surprised it or something and it freaks out and it doesn't feel like it's got enough space to run away. So it gives the human a good swat and then tries to run away. And it's even rarer that you find where there's predation, where one actually kills somebody just with the intention of eating them. Actually, black bears do that more often than grizzlies, believe it or not. Which is kind of weird. You would think that would be the opposite, but no, black bears.
Well, I'm still going to be more scared of the bigger one.
Yeah, well, you know, if a black bear swats you might not die. If a grizzly swats you, you're probably going to die. So there's another reason don't get swatted by a grizzly.
I've seen black bear, and I just like, man, they're so cute. I just want to go right up to them.
Oh, yeah, until you get a 720-pound one stalking and trying to eat you, and then you don't think they're so cute anymore.
Well, that's when I pull out some pots and pans out of my back pocket and start clanging them around.
That's when I pulled out my equalizer 12-gauge slug. Actually one that was big and old and crabby enough to think that it could get away with humans and potentially eating them. I think might have actually done it at some point, judging by the way it was acting. But it was tremendously huge. There was a guy that was trying to hunt the thing back in the woods behind our house, and he set up a tree stand back there, and he had to stand up at about 15 feet. And then he put I think it was about 4 or 5 inch diameter green piece of birch tree across in between these 2 pine trees and tied it up there. And then he hung a rope from that had a burlap bag full of like chicken guts and rotting apples in it that was hanging about 10 feet off the ground to attract the bear's attention. Well, he didn't go back out there for like 3-4 days, and he came back out on the weekend to hunt his stand again. When he got out there, he noticed that the piece of birch that he had strung between those 2 trees was actually snapped in half.
Oh.
The branches that he had stood on that were perfectly capable of supporting his 225 pounds had been snapped off. There were claw marks about 1.5 inches, 2 inches deep into the trunk of the tree where it dug in its claws to climb the tree because the branches wouldn't hold its weight. And then it reached up there to that 15 feet pretty easily and snapped that green piece of birch log 4 or 5 inches thick like it was nothing. And then it ate everything in the burlap bag, and it ate the burlap bag, and it ate part of the rope that was holding it up. And he saw one of its...
Oh, that's pretty epic.
And I got chased by this thing, so no.
Well,
that's who I thought was sitting in the driveway when I was walking down the driveway going, oh God, it's big bastard, he's going to kill me. And then I realized, no, it's even worse. It's a freaking Bigfoot sitting there waiting for me to walk into him.
Oh man, that was one of the awesomest stories I've ever heard, because I could just visualize being there and just the shock of something like that coming up on you when you think you're in a safe spot.
Like 40 years
I love
that
that
story
story.
happened. It's still hard for me to tell it. I still freak out if I have to tell that story.
That's
Because
one
it
of my
brings me
favorite
right
ones.
back to it. And it's just, and I've been through a lot of scary situations in my life.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a guy that goes to sleep and doesn't pay any attention when he's surrounded by Bigfoot.
Yep. Yeah, I've had them quite a few times when you think you're right near a road in your car, and then they let you know that they can they'll cut you off from your escape route and let you know.
Yeah. No, that last encounter I had where the one was pretending to be a stump and then gave me a glare when I wasn't falling for him pretending to be a stump. And then his glare convinced me that he was a stump. Yes, you're a stump. I agree, you're a stump. And I kept walking back to my camp. One thing that I don't usually mention to people is he was in between me and the road.
Yep.
So if he would have had a bad attitude, I was totally screwed because I couldn't get back to the road to get away from him. He was between me and there, which is why I went to my tent and hoped he wouldn't have a grudge.
Back to the sand, or the head in the sand tent.
Yep. Go back to my thermonuclear protection sleeping bag and pull it over my head so they can't get me.
I want anybody knows what that weird howling sound is or means. If it's a Bigfoot or some other thing, I would like to know. I mean, quite a few people listen to the show. I'd like to know.
Yeah, I'm just sad that I missed hearing it, but you did hear it, and you managed to find another call that was pretty much identical. So, at least we got that to play for the folks. And if anybody out there has a good notion or a for sure notion of what it is,
yeah, for sure.
Because we'd like to know for sure too.
Keep in mind, it was at that weird little area. Looked like a kind of a ceremonial area to me.
Creeping me out about that area, Bear, is because we've been on top of 2 of those hillsides over there now that are all old and eroded, and they're basically like mountain tops in this valley in the center of a mountain range. So nothing is rolling down to them. And they've got these weird anomalies on top of them. The one is where I found the boulder stack. The other one, you and me were up there, is where we found this cleared off area on top of one, and then we found these carvings in this one rock. So it's like, this whole area kind of gives me a vibe like it was some kind of a weird ceremonial area, maybe back during like the just post.
It's probably an area where there's a lot of energy in the earth, and we're white men and lose some of our knowledge of how things work, and some beings up there know how things work and do their ceremonies. I don't know what they're doing, but it's what it felt like to me. That's what my gut said. It's so weird. Like a huge Sasquatch does its whoop in the exact same spot, and then the course of evil starts up. So he was working with whatever they were.
I'm just glad I missed it, because that is one creepy vocalization. A whoop or something, no big deal. But that was just like, I don't really want to hear that.
And I would say that was the only time I've ever covered my ears. It was just natural. It's like, oh, that's evil. I don't want to listen to it.
God, yeah. Even though you're there looking for Bigfoot and all that kind of stuff, it's like, I'm good,
I'm looking for a fluffier experience, like some soft whoops and a tree off in the distance, and maybe my sandwich stole in the morning.
A tree and hoping that you're going to throw some beef jerky at him or something.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I guess that's about it.
All right, brother. Well, thanks for coming on the show, and I guess we better get on to the next guest now. We got to talk to Michael about what happened while he was up in Coloma. So with that,